Hello everybody, it's Robin the Delta Crafter, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of cards that I've made with the Emboss Resist technique, using it with ink blending. Let's get started. To get started, I'm going to be creating a background for my cards using the diagonal stripes background stamp from My Favorite Things. So here I'm putting a piece of Nina Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock into my Stamp Perfect stamp positioner to get it set up to stamp. So I'm going to be using Versamark ink, which is a sticky ink, to make the background. Then later on, I'm going to be applying white embossing powder, and I'll show you that in just a bit. So I've closed the door on my Stamp Perfect stamp positioner and stamped my background once. And I'm going to do it twice just to make sure that I get my surface completely covered with the Versamark ink. I'm going to rub the back of the stamp positioner to make sure that I get a good impression. Now I'm bringing in some Snow White embossing powder that I like to keep in a container so that it makes it easy for me to use and apply to my stamps. I do one side, tap off the excess, and then I switch to the other side. Using some reverse tweezers, I'm holding my panel at an angle while my heat gun is nice and hot, and I'm applying the heat gun to the panel in order to melt the embossing powder. And you can see that the embossing powder is melting right before our eyes. Especially when I tilt it in the light, you can see it a whole lot better. Because it is white on white, it is a little bit harder to see. Once we apply the ink, you'll be able to see the embossing powder and the impression that it's going to leave once it's all heat set. So now I'm showing you my first ink combination that we're going to be using for the ink blending. So I'm using Mowed Lawn, Mermaid Lagoon, and Squeezed Lemonade. So I'm going in with the Squeezed Lemonade first, and I'm going to apply a generous amount to that upper portion of the paper. I'm going to be covering about a third of the paper with each color, making sure that I continue to color just a bit beyond that third so that we get a good blend. Now moving on to Mermaid Lagoon. You may notice that I'm using magnets on my mat. I am using the We Are Memory Keepers self-healing mat that is magnetized. And I'm really enjoying having this mat to use because I can use magnets to hold my papers down when I'm ink blending. And that allows me to not have to put so much pressure from my fingers or my hand holding the paper down and in place. So I'm able to use the magnets to hold it in place, which again, I really like. So I've moved on to adding Mowed Lawn to the bottom portion of my blending. And I'm covering or going over the Mermaid Lagoon just a tiny bit to make sure that we get a good blend. Coming back in with Mermaid Lagoon one last time, because it's always a good idea to go back in with your colors, your second color, just to make sure you have a good blend. I'm going over the Mowed Lawn just a bit, and then intensifying the middle section where the Mermaid Lagoon color is. And now to finish it off, I'm going to come back in one last time with the Squeezed Lemonade to again soften the line between the blending and to create a smooth blend, which is what we want. Now I'm going to go in with a microfiber cloth and wipe away the ink that has been sitting on top of the embossed image that we use for our background. And there you can see the beautiful background we've created. So now I'm showing you a second set that I'm going to be doing using wilted violet, picked raspberry, and tattered rose. I completed the blending for this off camera, but you'll be able to see it in use later on when I show you the cards. For the sentiments for this card, I'm going to be using the Sweet Statement Stamp and Die set from the Stamps of Life. I purchased this set at a craft expo some years ago, but I checked their website and it's still available. Okay, let's talk, guys. I still have a Cuttlebug machine. And as you'll see in just a moment, I really need to upgrade. I know it, and I will soon. Because the mechanism that applies the pressure has gotten a few little gaps in it, and so I have to use shims to make sure that the pressure is significant enough to cut using my dies. So I do plan to upgrade very soon. But here I am placing the die on some black cardstock into my Cuttlebug machine to make the first cut. So as you can see, the die cuts beautifully, and we have a very sweet scripted sentiment that has been cut out. Off camera, I ended up cutting 3 statements and 3 backgrounds so that I can layer them for dimension. One of the things I really like about this die set is that it does come with the background already in the package. So you don't have to buy it separately. It comes like that, and it really makes a nice effect when you layer the sentiment onto the background. So I've gotten my 3 layers of white cardstock put together, glued together with glossy accents. Did you know you can use glossy accents as an adhesive? Yes, you can. So I use it to stack my 3 backgrounds, and now I'm using it to stack the 3 sentiments and glue them all together. This one was a little bit trickier, and it's great that the Glossy Accents bottle has a very small nozzle. That is important when you're trying to layer small script sentiments like this, like the sweet sentiment is here. A small nozzle gives you much better control and allows you to get the glue where you need it and not where you don't. Also, because it's a liquid adhesive, it gives you a little bit of time to fuss with the layering pieces to make sure that they're layered straight. Now my sentiment is laying up under an acrylic block to apply a little pressure and make sure they glue together and adhere together well. So now I'm going to put my sentiment onto the background. So again, I'm going to be using Glossy Accents as my adhesive and applying that to the back of the sentiment so that I can layer it. Picking up my sentiment and layering it. And again, because it is a liquid adhesive, I do have a little bit of time to make sure that everything is exactly where I want it to be. Now it's time to move on to assembling the card. We're in the final stretch. To add some dimension to my cards, I often use fun foam as a inexpensive way to add some dimension. So off camera, I cut down my background piece, and now I'm cutting and trimming the fun foam just to make sure that it fits within the borders of the background. And I'm using my ATG gun to apply the fun foam to the background, and now I'm also using it to apply adhesive to the fun foam to apply to the card base. So I'm applying it, applying the background to the card base and pressing down and making sure they adhere together. Now it's time to add the sentiments. So in that stamp set, there were lots of additional stamps that you could make to add to the word sweet to make a great saying. So for this card, I'm just using the "You're So" as a stamp and adding it to the die cut sweet. So I'm putting sweet down first. I've already stamped and heat embossed the "You're So Sweet" onto a piece of black cardstock and foam mounted that onto the card as well. And here we are with a finished card. I really love the way the ink blending works in the background with the heat embossing. And here we have another card I made off camera with the second set of distress inks that I showed you earlier. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and learning about this emboss resist technique. If you have, please remember to click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell to learn when I post new videos. If you want to see the other things I'm up to, you can follow along and find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Delta Craft. Until next time, bye-bye.